Hey, everybody. I hope everybody's well. My name is Mike, and thanks for joining me in this episode of Let's Live Code. The last time we looked at how to create specific rhythms and meters inside of a cycle. In this episode, we're going to look at some shortcuts and ways we can manipulate patterns as a whole. So let's do this live code thing, huh? We're going to start off by making some sound. To do that, we're going to pull up the classic sample from the Roland T09 Rhythm Composer with D1 sound and the 909. And there it is. Just a stock sound that we can use. And we'll go ahead and stop that. Now, we can do a shortcut to this. Instead of writing out sound every time, we can actually just use the variable s, and it would give us the same thing. And believe it or not, we don't even need the s at all. Except in cases where we need to separate the samples. So from here on out, you'll see S as the way we're going to notate this. So if we wanted to have 4 of these on the floor, like we had in previous videos, this is how we do it, right? We would just enter in 4 909s, evaluate it, and then we have 4 909 kick drums on the floor. That basic sort of kick pattern. However, the shortcut for this is just to use the multiplication symbol. So if we wanted 4 kicks, I could simply write 909 times 4, and there we go. And this makes it really nice to reevaluate it in real time. So if now we want to speed up the tempo to 8, or even 16, or even 32. So something kind of interesting happens by the time we hit 50 kicks in a cycle. And we can actually hear the pitch in the repetitions because we're actually driving it to self-oscillate. And like any good electronic musician, when you figure something like this out, your first instinct really should immediately be, how can I break this? So let's double the frequency and see what happens. And we hear the pitch up 1 octave, which makes sense because we perceive that as a multiple of the fundamental. Of course, we're being kind of tame with this. We can keep on pushing title and see where it breaks down. And I generally find myself that around the 3,000 sample in a second is the limit, even though we crapped out at 2,000. Yeah, something around there. So using this shorthand for multiples also makes it very easy to lock multiple patterns and reevaluate them during live coding sessions. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and give us a pattern that we can use to repeat. We'll take the 909 and have 8 of those in a cycle and maybe 16 hi-hats. And then we're going to go ahead and do something called OC, which will play triplets, and then an 808. And just playing with the pattern numbers, actually, we can get a lot of variation of sound and kind of an interesting rhythm. And that 808 sound is super noticeable to me. So let's assume I want less of that in the sound, but I still want it locked to a pattern. For this, I would use the reverse. I could use a division sign. So to hear that, let's go ahead and just isolate that Phil Collins TR-808 sound. Using a division sign really just means that that's the number of cycles that it's going to take before it repeats. So if I want to hear half of that every 2 cycles, I would divide it by 2. and now we hear less of it. If I want to happen once every 3 cycles, wait for it, and if I want to hear it a quarter of the time, I could do something like that. All right, so just to make it super clear, you can actually use the division and multiplication to bracketed things. So let's go ahead and take our 808 sound and put that into a series. So I'm going to get rid of the division and multiply by 8. So now we have 8 808s. If I want that half time, I divide it by 2. If I want that 8 beats spread over 3 bars, I divide that by 3. And if I want that spread over 4 bars, I divide it by 4. Which would be the exact same thing, by the way, as if we had 808 times 2. And just so you can hear that, that's what that is. All right, so now we're going to go back to our original sample. And what I want to do is take out the 808. So I'm going to divide that by 2. And now the 808 comes in every other measure. And these divisions can be applied to entire groupings of patterns, really anything with a square bracket. So if we wanted to speed up or slow down an entire pattern, all we would have to do is encapsulate it. So let's go ahead and select it, and then divide it or multiply it by 2. Now it's half speed. Now it's a third of the speed. Now it's a quarter of the speed. And now it's twice as fast and faster. Oh no, we've gone too far. All right, obviously, nested groups will allow us to control each part of the beat separately. So just to give us an example of that, let's go ahead and have a 2-sided beat. We're going to start off with, let's just say, I don't know, some hi-hats. Great, there's 3 of those, and maybe on the other end of the beat we'll have 3 909s. And we'll play that. Now when I apply multiplication to it, it only affects that side of the beat. And since subdivisions use those nested brackets also, we can apply multiplication and division to them too. That's a fairly complicated pattern. Let's examine how we can apply transformations to these patterns. We can achieve this simply by highlighting our pattern all the way over to the S and then encapsulating it in parenthetical rounded brackets. We're going to add something called rev before it, which will reverse it. Let's go back to maybe a more simple example so you can see what's happening with it. We're going to take a sound called ARPy, and we're going to basically take a bunch of different samples out of this ARPy folder. So we'll say ARPy 0, and then we're going to take ARPy 1, even though I just put 2, ARPy 1, and then ARPy 2, and then we'll say ARPy 3. Again, to apply the reverse function, we're going to select all of this, put the rounded brackets, and then put rev before it. And now you can hear it go backwards. And while that might not be the most musical application, but the reason why is because it's designed to be used with other functions. So a typical use would be to use it with the every function. And let me comment this out. The every function is a function that can do something every time. So it requires three things. It requires a number, it requires a function, and then it requires a pattern that we can apply that function to. So in order to use this, what we're going to do is we're going to highlight the rev and put that in parenthetical rounded brackets, and then we'll put every in front of that in something like 4. And what every does is it serves as a counter function. Essentially, the number is the number of times it counts the pattern. The second thing that it does is the function, in this case rev, and then the pattern that it's applying that function to is RP. So this means that it will play backwards on the 4th time. Zero, 1, 2, 3. Second time. Third time. Now go down. Up. Second time. Third time. And it goes back down. There you go. And as you can imagine, there's just a host of other functions that we can apply to patterns, and hopefully by the end of this video series, I will have documented them all, but I do want to show a couple of them to you right now. The first one's going to be slow, which is a way to sort of half time or quarter time or really slow down our tempo. We'll do it by half. And you can hear that's half already. You can slow it down to a quarter of the time. Also, along with slow, we also have the pattern fast, which goes in the opposite direction. And if you're looking through some old manuals and you see something called density, density was the function that was used for fast before they changed it to fast. All right, and just like reverse, which could be used selectively using every, we can also combine fast and slow with every as a counter, and we can get the same kind of thing going on. And to do this, then we have every 4, so it's going to play the pattern 4 times. On the 4th time, it'll play it 8 times faster than it did before. And if we evaluate this code, we'll get something that sounds a little like this. All right, and I'll go ahead and stop it right there for a second. I'm using this example to show you on purpose because I want to show you that fast and slow are not exactly the same thing as using multiplication and division to slow down and speed up sound. Fast, in this example, will fill out the cycle with the sequence repeated. So in this example, it's not only 8 times faster, but it's playing it 8 more times, which preserves our meter. So in the examples, the sound function takes a pattern of sample names and turns it into a pattern really of impulse or synthesizer triggers. And while that may take a while to kind of fully wrap your head around, the important thing to remember is that what we're dealing with, in the book they say it's patterns all the way down. And what this means basically is just that everything that we're doing is really just a series of sequences and triggers. If we're writing sound, we're not actually creating a sound. We're just creating a pathway to that folder, which then activates that sound. To prove this, we can actually take out S from our pattern, take the entire phrase, put it in rounded brackets, and this patterns will still play. So even if this doesn't make perfect sense to you yet, there's a couple things that I want you to know, which is just sometimes you'll see it written this way. And the more you play with these samples, I think the more it's going to make a little bit more sense to you. All right, that's it for this episode of Let's Live Code. I look forward to having more videos up soon. So send me any questions, comments, concerns, complaints, death threats, hate mail. I will read them all, and I hope to see you soon on the next episode of Let's Live Code. Bye.